Betty, speaking of blooms, Betty wants to know what she should do about her daylily bed, which has not bloomed this year despite growing lots of leaves. It's bloomed well for the past 7 years.
If they are the small reblooming hostas, happy return.
Oh no, sorry, daylilies.
Daylilies. If it's one of the reblooming daylilies like Stella Doro or Happy Returns, Happy Face, then those are hot daylilies that bloom. In the repeat bloom happens on parts of the plant that were growing vigorously young, increasing the clump. And when they get to be about 4 years old, if you don't dig those up and slice them into pieces and give them room to grow new stuff, they do start failing. They'll get just one set of blooms and many times not even a great set of blooms. So my guess is that that's what's going on with your daylilies, is they are the young, vigorous, reblooming type
Probably
that have gotten crowded.
Stella Doro.
And boy, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I do not like to grow daylilies as ground cover at all, because it's so much work to dig them up and divide them so often.
I have been avoiding rejuvenating the ones at the end of our driveway for exactly that reason. They fill the space nicely, but they definitely don't have the flowers they should, because dividing daylilies. Okay, let's see, what else have we got here? Gretchen is curious if you've grown baptisia from seed. And do you plant the pods or the seeds from the pod, and do you wait until they ripen and turn dark? She says she has some green pods that came green off the plant, but they won't grow, will they?
For the most part, baptisia growers who are hybridizing will grow them from seed, but most people don't, because they can take a long time to germinate. They can sometimes take 2 years in the ground, 2 cycles of being in frozen moist ground and then warm and then frozen moist ground before they germinate. And you do plant them when they get ripe, when the pod begins to split on its own. They might not be entirely brown, but the pod begins to split on its own, and then you're safe to plant them. Good luck with that. They do, once you've got them in your garden, you'll start seeing seedlings, but some of those seedlings that are coming up are from 4 or 5 years ago seed.
Yeah.
So in the chat, we discussed a little about Japanese beetle control. Judy says Japanese beetles are eating her newly planted cherry tree leaves. What do we suggest? We were talking about squashing and knocking them off into containers of soapy water. She says that she's been squashing and they still just keep coming back. Any thoughts on anything else that could be done there?
It is important with Japanese beetles to even if you've done control of the grubs where you think that they are living underneath your grass or whatever. On the adults, it's important to monitor and squash the first bunch that come in, because they release pheromones that call more Japanese beetles in. So your squashing might be leaving ones at the top. They do prefer to start eating at the top of a tree, and they're still calling in others. So you have to do a very thorough job of hand picking to keep them off. You might want to try throwing, if it's a young cherry, get floating row cover and throw it over the top of the plant so that you can see the Japanese beetles and brush them down off of the row cover. But it's a battle, and the tree will be okay. The tree will handle this, even though it's a young tree. It's later in the season. It's been growing for a while.
It should have had good, healthy. It's getting close to where the leaves are going to be switching even.
Yeah, that's right, to where the growth stops on the leaf.
Yeah.
So good luck, but there's no other secrets to that. And if you do use a pheromone trap, which some people do, they put out the yellow can with a bag under it. That's to let you know when the Japanese beetles are first coming. You put a pheromone trap out to alert you that they're flying. Go check your plants, and then you take the pheromone trap away, because it just becomes a beacon calling them in. We've told the story of our neighbor Fred, who always had us come and take a look at his linden tree. He said, "What's wrong with my linden? The top's all brown." And we'd come and look at it every year, and every year we'd say, "Well, it's Japanese beetles, Fred." "Oh, do I need to?" I said, "No, it's a big tree and it can handle the damage." And we would always feel a little bit conflicted as we walked down the hill back home, because we could have told them to handle the Japanese beetles some way, but instead we said, if they go to Fred's tree, they won't be coming into our yard.
In the chat conversation, Nancy had mentioned she'd heard that squashing them releases help me pheromones that calls in more Japanese beetles. Does that track? Does that
We'll have to look into that one. I've not heard of that, but if the pheromones are chemical, they are internal in the plant, in the bug. So it makes sense that if you squash it, just like when you squash a stink bug,
Mhm.
you can smell the stink. It could be that that's happening. We don't, we either crunch them, squash them,
There is,
or we feed them to the fish. We disable them by
yeah,
clipping a wing off. I mean, we do all kinds of terrible things with Japanese maples. I don't even like to get into
Beetles.
talking about it.
Okay.
Beetles, Japanese beetles. Sorry. Thanks.
Yeah, Pat and Judy were both interested in this as well. So I guess this will be a research topic for Janet for another webinar to
Yeah.
see what she can dig up about this. I've never seen Japanese beetles defend each other, so I have no idea what they would be doing for help aside from, hey, this patch is open because Fred just died.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
available. Very good. Very good.
There is, I will say, for those who might not have the chat open, there's a lot of tips and suggestions for what people do with their own Japanese beetles, if anyone wants to have a sort of peruse through.
I love it with their
yeah.
own Japanese beetles.
Yep. So we have about 5 more questions. They're kind of keeping coming in. Should I hold those for the next break?
Yes, yes, we should hold those for the next.
Okay.
Break.
All right. So just to shout out Susan, Lily, Susan, Barbara, Judith, we gotcha. We're hanging on.
Thank you, Sonia.
thank you, thank you.
Okay, so we'll close up in our garden today for this webinar and move on.